I'd like to introduce our moderator with Dr. Gorka. Thank you for being here with us and also answering questions. Let me introduce you shortly. She's a DC-based, prominent international broadcaster, renowned in her native Georgia for years of anchoring Voice of America's flagship Georgian language television program. And now she's providing independent journalism and commentary on Washington policymaking. Ian Meurmishvili.
How do I ask you the first question after this? It's like we need a.
It better be a good question. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for that, for the stories that you told us about. My first question would be: you try to explain President Trump and the administration. I think there are some gaps or there are some things that I would be curious about. When you talk about act like a friend if you want to be a friend, Europeans want to be a friend, but they're confused. And there's a gap or there's a miscommunication between the two sides of the ocean. How do you explain that? They want it, you want it, but there's something missing. What's missing?
So I think the easiest way to explain the confusion is very simply lies. Just lies, especially the mainstream legacy media. I remember, and he will go nameless, before the election, I did lots of media with European outlets. And I had a certain, let's just say, Scandinavian national news agency come to visit me in Washington and to interview me about what happens if President Trump wins again. And one of the questions from this man was, is he going to leave NATO? And I just looked at him and I said, were you in a coma when we were in the White House first time? Were you living in a cave with bad Wi-Fi? Did we leave NATO back then? Or did we make it stronger than it was when we arrived in the White House? I mean, look, it's fake news. The president has amazingly made this term popular because it's real. The way to understand President Trump, here's another reason why it's hard. Because there is no taxonomy for President Trump. You can't put him in a box. He doesn't fit under your neat academic or international relations theory. He's not a neoliberal, he's not a neocon, not a paleocon. He has no ideological identity because he's beyond ideology. The only thing you need to understand about my boss is two things. He loves America and he wants to fix America. He could have lived a very happy life for the last 9 years. A billionaire, golf courses from St. Andrews to Virginia. And instead, what did he do? He stepped into politics and was faced with 700 years in prison by lunatic left-wing judges, and they tried to kill him on multiple occasions. He doesn't need this. He's a patriot who wants to fix things. And how do I know this? You know when I realized he was going to win? A lot of people talk about, it happened here, it happened there. I know when he won. It was the visit to McDonald's. Do you remember the visit to McDonald's? Okay. He takes off his, $10,000 Brioni jacket, he puts on the apron, he's making the French fries. It's all very cute. I couldn't do that. I'm a counterterrorism guy. I'd be worried that I'd mess it up and look like an idiot. I'm not shucking fries at McDonald's. Are you kidding me? That's frightening. When did he win it? People missed the real moment. He went to the takeout window, and an immigrant Indian family pulls up, deep South Asian accent, and he hands out the lunch, and the husband says, "Thank you, Mr. President, for being there for people like us who are nobodies." Do you remember that? And the president says, what do you mean nobodies? You're an American, you're not a nobody. Passion, patriotism. But then what the wife said is the most important thing, and it's low, you've got to turn up the volume. Go back and watch it on YouTube. The wife says, "Thank you, Mr. President, for taking a bullet for us." Watch the president's reaction. He pauses, and then he goes, yeah, I guess I did. If he hadn't turned his head another quarter of an inch, he would have been murdered live on television. And I was there in Butler, Pennsylvania, when he went back. Who goes back to the scene of where they tried to assassinate him? That's how much he loves his country. And I've said this for years now on my radio show and my TV show. It's not right and left. Jettison the taxonomy of conservative and liberal, left and right. It means nothing. In most of our countries, the only dividing line is this. Do you love the country or do you hate it? That's the only difference. Look at Brexit. I was born in the UK to parents who escaped here in 1956. The biggest vote in British history was Brexit. 17.4 million Brits said, enough with the socialism of Brussels. We want independence. For the next 6 years, every member of the elite, from the House of Lords to the BBC, tried to sabotage the will of the British people. It was shocking. It was an outrage. Either the people decide, or you have authoritarianism. That's the bottom line. And President Trump, 77 million Americans understand he loves the country.
In your opening remarks, you said that we're out to get the enemies, to destroy them. And President Trump, the clip that you showed, President Trump also spoke about the values that unite us, that need to be defended. But you mentioned that there are global jihadists that are trying to destroy our values, and there are forces within. There are other forces, at least from my perspective, which are fighting against the Western values, against the way of life that we come to build and treasure. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Do you have any comments on them? Are they trying to destroy our values, and what is the administration doing to protect the values from them?
Look, I'll say this, this may sound a bit strange. When I came into the White House 8 years ago, I was expecting to do counterterrorism, like I'm doing today. But then, when you read the president's daily intelligence briefing, and you see everything that he sees, you realize very quickly that we will deal with the jihadists. We will crush them, we will contain them. President Trump destroyed ISIS in 5 months. We were told you just have to live with ISIS. We can deal with North Korea, we can deal with Russia, we can deal with Iran, we can deal with all of these countries. However, what I learned 8 years ago is that the primary threat to the West is the biggest communist dictatorship, which is China. And you don't need a clearance. Right now, you can go online and read China's plan to defeat the West. You can look at One Belt, One Road. You can read the senior PLA colonel's book, Unrestricted Warfare, which explains how China will take down the West, economically, financially, through subversion. And they have a plan. This is not classified. For the 100th anniversary of the communist takeover of China, for 2048, Beijing has stated there will be one superpower in the world, and it will be China. Period. End of story. Every other country will be a satrapy, will be a vassal state, or will be defeated. So the good news is President Trump understands that, and he's working on it right now.
Mm-hmm. We do have a question from the audience, which is about the economic issue. What can the Europeans do aside from reducing some tariffs, which are already low, to have better relations with the US?
That's all they have to do. I mean, seriously, the people misunderstand what the president is doing with tariffs. We believe in free trade, utterly. This is a businessman. He's a billionaire from Manhattan. But we want fair trade. How can it be that one of our NATO nations, it will go nameless, but they're very good in maple syrup, okay? One of our NATO nations had a 300% tariff on American dairy products. How can you be our neighbor and our friend and our NATO ally when you're punishing American farmers? Japan, which has profited so much from American support since World War II, Japan has emplaced, people don't know this, we grow a lot of rice in America, right? It's not just wheat and corn, we grow a lot of rice. Japan has a 700% tariff on American rice. I'm sorry, you say you're our friend, and you have a 700% tariff? If you want to have good relations with us, behave as if you are our friend, and then everything will be fine.
NATO. So we have only 4 minutes left. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
We've talked about from the NATO perspective, from Boris, as well as Mr. Chargé, you talked about it. But what's your anticipation or expectation from the Hague Summit? President's going to attend it. Everybody's looking to it with anticipation. Any insight into that?
I will not steal the thunder from my president or from my new boss, Marco Rubio, who is doing very, very valiantly the Kissinger thing. He's an incredible Secretary of State and an acting National Security Advisor. Every time I'm in cabinet meetings with him, he's very, very impressive. So I'll let them tell you what they're going to do at The Hague. However, I will echo what the Assistant Secretary General just said. You've got to be relevant. You've got to make a difference. A certain Prime Minister was standing next to my boss in the White House giving a press conference about 6 weeks ago. And he talked about how our troops will be on the ground in Ukraine. Our jets will be flying over Ukrainian airspace once we have a deal. And I'm thinking, Mr. Prime Minister, you don't have any boots. You don't have any jets. We have more special forces in America than you have soldiers completely in your country. So let's get real. Get back to a place. Look at the amazing Washington Treaty. The Washington Treaty is the shortest international treaty in world history. It's 14 paragraphs long. Usually they're, pages and pages and sub-paragraphs and this and that. What is one of the requirements for being a member of NATO? It's very simple. You have to be a functioning representative democracy, but the other one is you have to make a tangible contribution to the collective defense of the alliance. If you've downsized your military to a point of irrelevance, if you're not spending money on your own defense, how are you contributing to the alliance collective defense? You're not. So my expectation or my hope is that we will have serious attitudes from all NATO member nations, not just ones like Hungary or the Baltic states who understand what it's like to live under the boot of dictatorship. It's interesting how former communist countries from this region, they understand the threat.
And we do have questions about Hungary.
Yeah.
One is, what's your message to Prime Minister Orban regarding Chinese businesses and ties with China?
I would say one thing very simply. Anyone who's interested, anyone who finds the idea of seductive deals with Beijing interesting, read Unrestricted Warfare. Read the Chinese plan to enslave every country in the world that isn't communist China. It's out there. It's not secret. Read the plan and then ask yourself this as well. Why is Palo Alto, why has Silicon Valley changed its mind about doing business in China? If Palo Alto has changed its mind, then maybe everyone should take another look.
Another question on Hungary. Is Hungary acting like a good ally to the United States?
Oh, that is so undiplomatic. As Deputy Assistant to the President, I recuse myself from that question. But as a child of those who escaped this nation, I will say things are very promising, very, very promising.
Very good. There was a question about military, Russian intelligence cooperation in Hungary. So maybe that's the aspect you want to take it.
What? No. I'm not, okay, not familiar.
Very short question coming from the audience. So, Ukraine. Let's briefly. We're out of time, but Ukraine. President Trump is scheduled to talk to President Putin and then President Zelensky today. Yesterday and the day before, we saw some of the heaviest bombings of the Ukrainian cities in the whole country, not just eastern side. What do you think the message is that Putin is sending to President Trump, especially just before, after this very important phone conversation? And what do you think President Trump's view would be on that?
I think these are signs from Moscow of weakness. One doesn't do this from a position of strength. It's an attempt to shape negotiations, and they will fail. The president has one overarching objective, and that is to stop what Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, called the meat grinder. It is a meat grinder of young Ukrainians and young Russians, and it needs to stop. At the end of the day, there's only one man who will stop it, the man who literally wrote The Art of the Deal, and that's my boss, President Trump. So everyone here should pray for the success of President Trump, because just across the border in Ukraine is the meat grinder, and we should all want it to end. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have many more questions, but we need to wrap this up. Thank you very much. Thank you.